Alrighty, I got another week of Legends of the Force spoilers to go over. Now, I do apologize, I'm a little under the weather, so you might hear that a little bit in my voice, but still gonna chug through and get through these preview cards. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and if you're interested in some more content from me, do check out my Patreon as well. Soon I'll be kickstarting some Set 5 brewing, so it'll be pretty exciting over there. Alright, so as always, I do start with the leader review, and then I'll go into the general card review. I did want to do a brief conversation about the Force mechanic as a whole, just kind of like a general idea musing about this set. So this is a really major theme in this set, the Force mechanic, the Force token, cards that generate Force, especially with the Force bases that let you get it whenever you attack with a Force unit, and then a bunch of cards that use that Force mechanic or that Force token, or some that even get buffed if you have that token. It's very consolidated to this set though, right? So in order to be able to build effective decks around this mechanic, it's going to need to be heavily supported in this one set. There's not very much in the other Force sets that have existed so far that really play into this. There are a few Force units, of course, that are powerful that you can incorporate into these heavy Force decks. But for the most part, anything that's going to synergize with that Force mechanic has to come from this set. We're only about halfway through right now, but if you do go try to brew some decks right now surrounding this mechanic, I think for the most part, you'll find that it's a little short right now. Now, we have a whole half of a set left. I do expect we're going to get a bunch more Force units, a bunch more ways to kind of have an effective early game, especially. I think that's where it's at its weakest right now. Like, yes, there's been some good 2-drops in Force in this set, but not enough, I don't think, yet to really support a powerful turn 1 for most of these decks. And do remember that even in the future, it's unlikely that we're going to see more cards that come out that synergize specifically with this mechanic. So if you look back at previous sets, I think Twilight of the Republic is probably the most potent example of this. There were 2 build around mechanics in that set, exploit and coordinate. Both pretty much fell short, right? It just wasn't supported enough in that one set. Of course, we never got cards to that with coordinate or exploit or ways to effectively make that mechanic better in future sets. And essentially all the leaders that required you to build around that didn't really work out. It's happened a little bit in some other sets as well, like Bounty and Smuggle. Now, Smuggle wasn't really a build around. Bounty was, and it did luckily work out for exactly one deck, which is Bosk. But he's not really getting any better in that mechanic, right? Bounties have not existed since that set. So basically, anytime you look at a boss deck, set by set, it hardly changes. It just gets a little bit upgraded in like its general build. So that's one thing to look for when looking at these Force decks and this Force mechanic. We're really going to hope that these leaders are supported, right? Because most of the deck, it's 50 cards, 60 cards, whatever it may be, most of it is going to have to come from set 4. It's going to be kind of a block constructed sort of build around mechanic with, the events, maybe the removal will come from other sets, maybe a few Force units here and there will come from other sets, but for this mechanic to take off, it's going to need to be supported. So hopefully in the second half of these spoilers, we see even more powerful Force units and build-arounds for this. And let's jump right into the first leader, which is kind of the most in-your-face example of this, right? This leader is entirely focused around this mechanic. It's Avar Kriss. It's a command heroism. It's got a 9 deploy. Now, if you read that epic action, you will see that it's not going to be 9 most of the time. It's as if the number, it reduces the deploy cost for each time you've used the Force this phase. So, we can get it cheaper, right? I don't think you're going to get this very cheap, but maybe down to 7 might be a realistic goal. Use the Force twice. And of course, on the leader side, it has a very powerful action, just gives you the Force. Now, you're going to probably need to pair this with the base that also generates Force on attack, because you are trying to generate the Force token multiple times in one turn just to discount this leader. So it's not going to be enough to just use this ability. You're going to need other ways to generate the Force. But it's very powerful, for instance, with anything that can use that token on turn 1. A really powerful card would be that Jedi Consular, which has Use the Force. The next unit you play costs 2 less. So you can do that on turn 2 and play a 5-drop on turn 2 with very little room for your opponent to interact because that unit has 4 health. But this unit, when it flips, it's a 4/10, says while the force is with you, it gets +4/+0 and overwhelm. So it'd be an 8/10 overwhelm. Of course, if you're using the on attack base, even if you don't have the force when she flips, on her attack, she'll generate that force token and become an 8/10. That is absolutely enormous. But this is a huge build around one very specific thing, which is I want my leader to win me the game. That's similar in a sense to Anakin, right? Because you can build this deck, but you're very much all in on this leader. It doesn't mean you, of course, can't beat like control decks that just have like one-shot removals for leaders. Like Rival's Fall is obviously a very potent example of a way that like you can try to target this leader where you're like trying to just make this as cheap as possible. You flip and then it just dies and like all that work for nothing. But it does also have a very powerful leader ability, just giving you the force every turn without needing to attack, without needing to use cards that generate it. So very, very consolidated leader to this set. I think most of the cards that you will build around this leader will have to come from this set. A lot of ways to use the force and a lot of ways to generate it. But the payoff is there. I don't know how likely it is you can get this cheaper than 7 in a realistic game scenario. Maybe you can get this down to 6, which would be pretty cool. But remember, it would have to be the turn you get to 6, which isn't super easy. I don't think creating and generating 3 force tokens in one turn is going to happen too often. But we'll see with the rest of the set. And the next new leader is a command villainy. It's Morgan Elspeth, and this is a 5 deploy. So that's right in that sweet spot. It's a very weird build around. It's an action that choose a friendly unit that attack this phase, and then you can play a unit that shares a keyword with that unit, and it will cost 1 less. So 2 restrictions, right? First, the unit has to attack. Second, the unit that attacked has to match a keyword. So, I attack with my Saboteur. A Saboteur that I play for my hand will cost 1 less. Now, you likely will need to have a high density of like 1 or 2 keywords in your deck, right? If this isn't going to be great if you're spread around a bunch of keywords, right? Maybe a lot of ambush units since it's such a good keyword. The interesting thing about ambush too is that if you have 2 ambush units and they're both like relatively cheap, you can play the first one, it attacks, it immediately activates this ability, and then you could play the second one for 1 less. Now it's not going to happen early in a game because you still have to pay for both of these units, but later in a game you might be able to double ambush in situations that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to because maybe you have 2 4-cost ambushers, but now you can do it for 4+3. Other than that, this is one that is going to take me some time to like wrap my head around. At first glance, I think it's going to be a little too clunky because of the double restriction, the attacking and the keyword matching. Now resource cheating is a very powerful mechanic, but it doesn't automatically mean a leader will be good, right? We've seen a lot of good ones, usually the ones that are much more like easy to trigger with their resource stuff. Think both Han 1 and Han 2, those are resource cheating interactions, but they're like much cleaner. The original Boba was a resource cheating mechanic, but then you look at something like Dooku, he was very narrow, right? It was just separatists, and although he could create 2 resource cheats with his ability, it still didn't really quite get there because it was too narrow, and that may be where Morgan ends up, although being a 5-cost 3/6 deploy does raise that floor a little bit, especially when you're in green villainy, which means you're in the world of being able to ramp with resupply and super laser tech and flip this leader on turn 3 a lot of the time. And on her flip side, it's a very similar thing, except now that trigger on her attack, and then all it needs to do is share a keyword with any unit that's in play. So she unfortunately doesn't have any keywords, so she doesn't enable like herself. It would have been nice if they had given her like 1 keyword just to like help raise that floor a little bit, because if she is your only unit, this does nothing, and I think that's a little unfortunate. But she does also have 3 relevant traits: Force, Imperial, and Knight. So weird build around, could certainly become more potent the more cards and sets get released. And the last new leader, there were 3 for this week because I had to push my video a little bit due to my travels, but this was Ahsoka Tano. It's a Vigilance heroism leader. It's a 6 deploy, Has action, use the force token, give a friendly unit sentinel for this phase, and it flips into a 5/6 that says on attack you may give a friendly unit sentinel for this phase, including herself if you want. First of all, 6 cost 5/6 is not it. That is not a good stat line at all. Really unfortunate. The ability I think is fine. I mean, it's not great. I don't think like giving temporary sentinel is all that much. I mean, this is akin to like Chewbacca's ability from set 1, with more restriction, right? Because you have to get that force token. I think this one, in all honesty, I think this is a really boring leader. I don't think this is an exciting build around. I don't think it's powerful at all. The unit deploy is so weak. 5/6 for 6 is just not it. Even like 4/7 for 6, which is a better stat line than this, has typically been too weak, with very fringe cases of them being good enough. We just need to see better stats on 6 deployed leaders, in my opinion. I don't think this is going to be an exciting build around. I don't think it's going to be a powerful build around, and I don't have much else to say about this one. And this is a bit of a call-out card for Ahsoka, the T6 shuttle. It's a 3/4 in space for 3 in Vigilance heroism, so you know the stats are good, right? We see 3/4 for 3 in space a lot. A lot of them are playable, sort of. Some of them are better than others. This one says when it's attacked, you may give it an experience token. So obviously the idea here is Ahsoka gives it Sentinel, so it discourages anyone from attacking it, right? I don't think you're going to see this with experience very often because no one's going to attack into it unless they can one-shot it through that experience. So, you know, it's mostly just a 3/4 for 3 in space, which is like sort of fine. Now it doesn't have the force trait, of course, because it's a flying spaceship, which means it doesn't work that well with Ahsoka because she needs to be generating that force token to even give things Sentinel. The card is, it's whatever. Like I think there's just better 3/4s for 3 in space, but this isn't the worst thing. So, yeah. Now, Lothwolf is a very interesting card. This is a 2-cost heroism vigilance. It's just a 3/3 sentinel, and it can't attack. So, let's get the bad out of the way. It can't attack, and that is a big deal. It's like a bigger deal than it might seem at first because it's also action. It doesn't give you action efficiency in game, right? You play this on turn 1, and then you know, sometimes you want to be able to do something before playing a card. Well, you can't really do that when you play Lothwolf because you don't get that action to attack with. So that's a downside. Upside here, well, it's by far the most overstated turn 2-cost sentinel in the game. So that's really good for defensive decks in particular. You're not going to want to play this in a deck where you're the beatdown or even trying to be the beatdown. It's a creature, so it kind of works with the new Kanan leader, although I don't think the Kanan leader is really in the market necessarily for such a defensive turn 1 play. It looks to be more like a mid-rangey deck, but there is a world where just having access to such a cheap sentinel, especially one that you can then put a shield on with Kanan's ability, could be effective. Where I like this the most is actually, interestingly, with the Chancellor Palpatine leader, because you want a high density of turn 1 heroic plays, especially in blue, which is where I found him to be the most powerful. So having blue heroic turn 1 plays that are effective and defensive especially, like this is a unit that they will have to remove in order to push damage on your base, and then you can flip, right? This triggers Palpatine's flip. So that's a cool card in that deck. I think the card is nice. It's a nice thing to have. This isn't like some broken card, of course. Like, remember, your opponent gets to dictate how to interact with this because this can't attack. So they're not going to just like suicide units into it just because it has Sentinel. Sentinel does not mean your opponent has to attack it. It just means they can't attack anything else. All right. Let's get this one out of the way. Mythosaur, it's a new legendary. It's a 10/10 shielded for 9. Friendly upgraded units can't be exhausted or returned to hand. Friendly leaders gain the Mandalorian trait. I don't get the point of this even remotely. This might be the most bulk legendary in the game. Yeah, we got it out of the way. Now, here is a good legendary. This is Darth Vader. It's a Vigilance Villainy 6-drop. It's a 5/6. It says, when played, give a shield token to a friendly unit and to an enemy unit. Interesting ability, right? You can give it to himself and one of your opponent's units. You can give it to one of your other units. If your opponent doesn't have any units in play, you actually get to bypass that part of it, which is neat. And then it has an on attack, defeat an enemy unit with a shield token, and that's any unit. So if like you gave your opponent's leader a shield or some big spaceship a shield, there's no restriction on arena, there's no restriction on non-leader. So anything with the shield, when this attacks, it just defeats it. Okay. Let's just not bury the lead. This card is absolutely cracked if you give it ambush, and it is 6 cost, which means it works with Energy Conversion Lab. It, of course, works with Timely Intervention, and there is a new card, Scion Flurry, the yellow version of Timely Intervention. Since this is a Force unit, it works with that as well. What happens when you give this ambush? Well, you do the when played first. You give anything you want a shield on your opponent's side, and you give maybe Darth Vader a shield if he's going to attack into something big. And then Darth Vader goes and slays anything with 5 or less health. And at the same time, he also kills whatever you gave the shield token to, which can be a leader. It can be a spaceship, like I said. It just kills 2 things, leaves behind a 5/6. If this was a shielded unit, right, it's just going to leave behind the fully healthy Vader. If Vader was going to effectively trade whatever he was ambushing into anyway, you could put that shield on another one of your units if you want, and so on and so forth. If you are not ambushing with this, is incredibly slow, right? It's a 6 cost that just kind of gives 2 things a shield, which could be a huge downside if they immediately remove Darth Vader and now they just have a shield for free from your Vader's ability. But this is cracked when it's ambushing, so it's certainly something to look at building around in greens with ECL and with yellow with Scion Flurry. It's just, I think, probably worth really digging into that interaction, seeing how far this can get pushed because of just how crazy it is. Like, it might even be better than Wrecker with ECL, which has been the like de facto best ECL card in the game. And Villain especially has just not had anything of that power level, right? Like, the best ECL things to be doing in Villain have been like Lone Pike, which interestingly actually kind of synergizes with this, although it's a very, very slow synergy and not one that I expect to come up very often. But yeah, this is worthy of its legendary status. I don't think this is necessarily like going to be everywhere because the card is not particularly good if you're not ambushing with it, but it is so good when you are. All right, we got a couple green cards that I can go over quickly. Knight of Ren is Command Villainy, 3 cost 4/4 with First Order. Now, we've seen this stat line on General Grievous, which was a legendary in Twilight. Card saw virtually no play. I don't expect this one to be amazing, but it is First Order, which does buff a little bit into like the First Order synergy stuff, like the Captain Phasma leader or like Hux. It's a good stat line if it can be if there's like an aggressive green villainy deck that really wants it, but First Order is not yet a particularly supported archetype. I don't think one more First Order card necessarily does that, but it's interesting. And then we've got a 4-cost Ambusher in green. It's a 2/4 Ambush, Restore 2. It is Force, which means it will generate that Force token when you ambush with it, but 2 power on 4-cost Ambush, even with that Restore, is just, I think, way too weak. It's so soft. Only attacks for 2. I don't think it's particularly great. Jedi Starfighter, though, is an interesting card. It's a 2-cost 1/4 with the Jedi trait in space for aggression heroism. On attack, you may deal 1 damage to a space unit. I think because it's Jedi traded, what's nice about this is it works with the Kit Fisto leader that was revealed. Now, we don't see Force in space, but we have seen Jedi in space. I think Anakin's Interceptor is also one, which means if you have space and ground Jedis, you can trigger Kit Fisto's ability more reliably. Kit Fisto's ability notably very strong because it's 1 cost to deal 2. So it's just some Kit Fisto support. It's probably not great outside of that because it's just a 1/4. That ping is nice, but because it only has 1 power, even with that ping, it's not killing most space units that have 3, like, because most of them just don't have 2 health, right? So it's a cool card. It's not bad. We'll see how it kind of fits in, especially with Kit. Mace Windu is a very interesting card. It's interestingly an uncommon. It's kind of like Wrecker. It's a 6-cost aggression heroism card. It's a 6/6 overwhelm, so just 1 power less than Wrecker, but then the stats are very similar. It's got that overwhelm. It's a Force Jedi. It says when played, you may use the Force if you do deal 4 damage to a unit. Now, Wrecker deals 5, but makes you blow up 1 of your resources. This only makes you blow up 1 of your Force token, and it doesn't have to only hit ground. It can hit space units as well. The card is quite powerful, and also would be very good with ECL, but I don't think necessarily has to be. The Force token, losing that Force token is probably not as big a deal as losing a resource. It's a big reason why Wrecker has a hard time fitting into decks that want to go higher than 6 on the curve most of the time, because if you're capping out at Wrecker, blowing up those lands those resources can be a big issue. But with Mace Windu, it doesn't have to be the top of your curve. You can play this as a stabilizer, use it kind of open fires something, and then you can keep going up the curve. I think this card is quite good in a force deck, right? We'll see if that force mechanic is supported enough. That's always going to be the big question in this set, but as a payoff, I think it's quite good. Priestess of the Force is a 7 cost 6/8 in Vigilance. It says when played, you may use the Force. If you do give a shield token to up to 5 units, it's any units. You know, it's probably just way too slow because it's like 7 cost for just like stats. It just gives shields to the whole world. In any kind of grindy game where that might like come up, I think primarily in like a limited format, it could be decent. It's probably not a constructed card though. Shatterpoint probably is a constructed card though. This is a 4 cost Vigilance event. Choose one. Defeat a non-leader unit with 3 or less remaining health. So that's a weak version of Takedown, right? Because Takedown is 5 or less remaining health, and Takedown can also hit leaders. But then you have the upgraded version of this. Use the Force if you do defeat a non-leader unit. So if you use the Force, this becomes Vanquish, and this costs 4 instead of 5, and that goes into this theme of the Force token basically being worth 1 resource in terms of power. So use that Force token, you're getting a 1 cost reduction on a Vanquish effect. And you know, I think any deck in blue that is going to have this Force token will likely just run this card because 4 is a much better cost than 5. It just works much cleaner. So this is a really solid removal for a Force deck, and we'll see what we can do with that. We got another Force payoff. This is Sorceress Blast. It's 1 cost, says use the Force if you do deal 3 damage to a unit. So 1 cost, deal 3. It's powerful. It might not be as powerful in this set as it would have been in previous sets because a lot of units have more than 3 health now, especially on turn 1. We're seeing 4 health being kind of a new baseline. But 1 cost, deal 3 is a good payoff. This is solid. It's cheap to fit into a curve. I like it. I don't love it. I like it. And I think it'll be a role player in some Force decks if we see them in red. We got Pounce, which is a new pump. It's a 2 cost trick. Attack with the creature. It gets +4/+0. So this is actually power creep on Surprise Strike, but only for creatures. Now, there aren't very many of them, and most of them aren't very good yet, but maybe we'll see some creature aggro kind of build up. It's a ton of damage. +4/+0 is a crazy amount of damage. We just need enough good creatures for this to be worth it over something like Surprise Strike or in conjunction with Surprise Strike. Vesper Row is a very good unit. It's a 3 cost cunning heroism, 3/4. Now it's not 3/5. We're seeing lots of 3/5s, but this comes with a really powerful ability. You can use the Force token to just ready it, kind of get like a Millennium Falcon in a sense. So if you're playing a turn 1 Force unit, that unit can attack. You get the token. You play this. It's readied immediately. Works really well with like any time that you can curve Force in the early game, and I just think it's a really solid turn 2 play, and it's going to be in like aggressively slanted or mid-rangey slanted yellow hero decks, and you know it has Force, so it's going to keep that train rolling, right? You get to attack with your turn 1 play, get the token. Vesper comes in, she's ready, she can attack, you get that token back, so it's like very little goes wrong once you get this train rolling. Now we've got a very interesting rare. It's Eye of Scion. It's a command villainy card. 4/7, weird stat line, has 4 keywords: hidden, ambush, overwhelm, and restore 1. Ambush being the primary keyword here. Now 4 power is not a ton at 6 cost, but you have to remember in space that is often good enough to kill a lot of threatening units, especially for these like mid-range or control command decks. Hidden, you know, it's weird, but like it's going to attack into something, take some damage back. It's going to be difficult for your opponent to then hit it back. It'll stick around for another turn, maybe be a good target for overwhelming barrage the following turn. Overwhelm, probably the weakest part about this whole card. It's unlikely to be doing much overwhelming, but restore 1, you know, don't underrate that. This chipping away a couple heals as it gets through a couple units is going to be very relevant. This card, it's not like reading as a mega exciting card, but I think it's going to be a decent role player in some decks potentially if the right targets exist, right? Like I would play this card right now in like a Kira deck because there's like Vader decks that are very space heavy, and this is just like a giant brick wall. It can kill things like Lurking TIE Phantom, which are often tricky cards for command villainous decks to deal with, right? So this is going to be very meta contextual, but it's definitely a tool that's interesting to have, right? It's something you'll look at as metas evolve and be like, okay, now is the time for Eye of Scion, because there's like this tier 1 swarming space deck, and this is going to be a pretty good card against them. So yeah, this is nifty. Shinhhati is another very good card. It's a 3-cost Cunning Villainous Force unit. It's a 4/2, hidden and shielded. So just got a ton of protection built into this card. 4 power on 3 cost is solid, right? Think 7th Fleet Defender, which has been a very powerful 3/2 shielded space unit for a very long time. Not always played in all decks, but a really neat card. And this is kind of better, right? Like hidden gives it even more protection because they're not going to be able to really deal with this the turn you play it outside of removal. And then that shielded, of course, gives this potential to really go off. It's force traded, which means it's going to be able to generate you that force token on attack, enable those force synergies. The card is just really solid. And we got Balon Skull here as well, and he's also hidden. He's a 5/5 hidden for 5 in Cunning Villainy. It says, when played, you may use the Force. If you do, return a non-leader unit that costs 4 or less to its owner's hand, then its owner may play it for free. So it's just like New Adventures a card. Now, it can be your own or your opponent's, but they immediately get to put it back into play. It doesn't like require another action. It'd be nice to re-trigger something like Shinhhati's shield, right? Because that shield would then come back. Or if you have an ambush unit, you can do it and then ambush with the unit, right? It's playing, so all those when played effects get re-triggered, and that's the idea here. And of course, he's hidden, so even though like 5 cost 5/5 isn't like a particularly exciting stat line, he's not one that can just immediately be like value traded off the board because of the hidden. He also would re-trigger hidden on other units, right? Because that is a when played effect. So very interesting card. I think Shinhhati's the more exciting of the duo here, but Balon has a cool effect, and we'll see how it works out. All right, some not so exciting cards. Magistrate Scouts, a 3-cost 2/4 restore 2. Stats are not great. Protect the Pod, a friendly non-vehicle unit, deals damage equal to its remaining HP to an enemy unit. This is like Bad Strike True, which is not particularly good in its own right. And then Jedi Vector is a 1/3 for 2 that gets +1/+0 if you control a Jedi and +1/+0 if you control a lightsaber. So also not particularly good. These are mostly filler cards. Although Protected Pod would probably be decent removal in limited. Itinerant Warrior, cool card, 4-cost heroism, vigilance. It's a 4/4 shielded, so shielded is a great keyword. It's got force, so it's going to work with that. It says you may use the force when you play it to heal 3 from a base. That's a pretty efficient little card. Could be even better in like Han 2, because now you get this 4/2 shielded unit and it costs 3. That's like Shinhhati all of a sudden, and you still get this ability to like heal if you need it. Yeah, neat card. Kiatt Mundi is another pretty decent force payoff. It's an aggression heroism 4/4. Now the stats for 4 cost aren't good. 4/4 for 4, not exciting. But it says when you play him, you may use the force if you do draw 2 cards. That's a lot of value built into this. This could be very punishing against like control decks, which typically just need to be able to like remove your threats no matter their stat line, right? 4 cost 4/4 might not be super exciting, but it still needs to be removed. And all of a sudden you get it removed, but you've still drawn 2 cards off of this ability. And that can help a lot. Like this is, I think, at its best in like grindy games, because that draw 2 for like you're not paying that much for it. It's just the force token. Quite solid. Dooku is a 4-cost 5/4 in Cunning. He's hidden, so that's important, right? Because 4 health on 4 drops typically are a little soft, and it also says when played, each friendly unit with hidden can't be attacked. So for this phase, so it's kind of re-triggering hidden on all your hidden units, which is interesting. I think if we're getting into this like hidden aggro style deck, which could very well be possible, especially in villainy, I think, then this can be solid, right? If you can play this and then get an attack off with him, 5 power on 4 is a lot. The issue, we've seen it on some units, the issue has of course been that 5/4s don't live long enough to attack a lot of the time, but he's much more likely to because he's hidden himself. And he can protect the rest of your units the turn you play it by re-triggering all their hiddens. And then we've got some whales. So these are space creatures. So these are non-vehicle space units, which is a first. Keep in mind that it means you can upgrade them with like lightsabers and stuff, right? Those things you typically say non-vehicle units. So that's interesting. Some design space to work with. Now, none of these are particularly interesting or powerful, I don't think. There's a 5-cost Vigilance one. It's a 2/7 Sentinel. That's a lot of health, but it's like no power. There's a 6-cost 4/10 with no text. Also not particularly exciting. And then the one with like the effect is Grappling Guardian. It's a 7-cost Vigilance 3/9. Says when played, you may defeat a space unit with 6 or less remaining HP. So that actually can defeat some relevant space units, but being a 7-cost is quite a lot, and the unit itself isn't a particularly big threat because it's a 3/9, right? It's a ton of health, but it's not particularly threatening unit because of only the 3 power. So all in all, these don't look super exciting to me, but there is like interesting design space with them being creatures. Of course, they work with Kanan, but they also work with like upgrades in space now. So a cool thing to explore. But that's all I got for you with this spoiler review. Let me know what you think of these cards. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, check out my Patreon, and until next time, take care.